Well, hi everybody, I'm Liz Harrison, and we are here at the June 26, 2023 regular meeting of the Brattleboro Housing Partnership Board of Commissioners. We're at Hayes Court Community, 50 Garfield Drive. So welcome, glad to have everybody. Okay, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes for the last meeting of May 22nd?
Yes.
And do we have any additions, corrections, questions? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
A motion that we accept the May 26, 2023 minutes.
A second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, passed. I don't see that we have any resident or citizen participation. Okay. So our next item is our executive director, your report on following the previous meeting and the other items.
Great, well, thank you. I just wanted to offer my thanks for all of your support while I was on medical leave. I am back to work 100%, so full-time as of now. I am working sometime remotely to go home and rest midday, but other than that, I'm mostly working in the office. So I came back on May 17th part-time. But during that time, Lorelei Morissette did an excellent job.
Yeah.
And she was really supported by many other staff. David, Billy Joe Ricky, our accounts, an accounts administrator was a huge help as well. So and Jeanette White, and the rest of the staff. So it was great. The Brattleboro Housing Partnerships is in the process of hiring for 2 positions. We are very close to hopefully hiring a SASH coordinator for the Samuel Elliott Apartments and Melrose Falls. So we're just in the process of checking references. We have a wonderful candidate. And Elizabeth Watson, the RN for the SASH For All program, has resigned from her position. She's moving out of town. She gave us a great notice. So we've been in the process of hiring for that for a few weeks. So we have a few great potential candidates. Other than that, we're fully staffed. Our Adaptiva, which is the EAP program, has let us know that they will no longer be providing employee assistance program services as of the end of July. We began to look at other programs and we found one that we really like, which is called Invest EAP. It's used by Vermont, the state of Vermont, and a few other organizations, a few other housing providers, including Vermont State Housing. And so the staff has decided that that would be the program they'd like to go with. So we signed a contract for that. We talked a little bit about this for the past few months, just around hiring mental health clinicians or social workers for our 2 programs. We are in talk with HCRS and the retreat about that. We've decided that the peer support advocate was not really the right role for that program. So we're really looking for either a social worker or a mental health clinician. We finished the site survey at Melrose Terrace, so very exciting. FEMA will be on site July 24th to inspect the project, and at that time, hopefully afterwards, we'll receive the letter of map revision, the LOMAR, and once we have that, we can really go full throttle, really proceed with the redevelopment of Melrose. You'll see in the packet at the end, there was a draft of the potential bid that we're going to be putting out as after we get the LOMAR. But I wanted you guys to have a heads up about it. Our fiscal year audit 2022, April to 2023, March 31st is underway. HUD will be coming to Brattleboro, some of our HUD representatives. This month, you are welcome to attend. We are planning an open house at Red Clover Commons in the big community room, and they will be offering a HUD-sponsored internet program that is a significantly reduced program for individuals. We're hoping to have some tables set up of interesting information for people. We're inviting the whole community. It's open to everybody, so if commissioners would like to be there, you're welcome to attend.
Quick question. Will that coordinate with Xfinity for those who have that?
I believe it does.
Okay,
I think
great.
it does. I think it just offers a subsidy off of whatever program you have, and they plan on helping people sign up right there.
Perfect.
So having laptops and going on and helping people to sign up right there.
Good.
As you know, I sent information about the recent serious drug arrest at the Moore Court property. That was at June 8th, and it was in the morning that day. There were state police there as well as Brattleboro police. It had been a very long investigation on their part. And luckily there was no serious injuries during the arrest. However, it was very, there was a large amount of drug paraphernalia, money, gun. So it really was very disruptive for the community for months on end. As I put in my report and was put in the newspaper that household had been under eviction for some time. We did put out a letter to residents, which I included in my packet. And then we had a brief or a meeting last week with some residents. We opened up to the whole community. We invited Turning Point to come to talk a little bit about substance abuse disorder and supporting people with the disorder, but also talked a lot about not wanting the trafficking in our housing site, and that it's okay to do both of those things, support people who are struggling with this and also not want this to be the drug trafficking on our property. And Knowles Wentworth also came from the police department, and my understanding is he's going to be trying to meet with people on the property site to talk more. The people that attended said that they did want some more information to share with their neighbors around how to stop the stigma of substance abuse disorder. So we're going to be setting up programming for that. They also really wanted to have access to Narcan on the property site, so we were trained in that, and then we were also talked about keeping it in the offices so that people could get them, come in and get them as needed. So it wouldn't be for an emergency, but that if they thought it was something they might need in their life, that they would have access to that. And they also said that they would like to have some sort of community event with the police department. So we're in the process of scheduling that, either a barbecue or a social, ice cream social, because they wanted to thank them, but also really get a better relationship with them. I'm very impressed by the residents of Moore Court. They worked really hard. They did a lot of advocacy for themselves over the past few months by contacting us, by contacting the police department, and I don't think without their help we wouldn't have seen this situation end the way it did. So I'm very grateful for them.
I just want to also thank you too, and you as well also, Christine, for being so swift and getting on this, in the collaborative effort, as I said in our emails about, working with the Brat PD and with the people. I mean, it's a very hard situation for some because, people live in that fear.
That's right.
But, at some point people rise above that and they want to, have a better, safer community because there's unity in the community. They came together and they said, listen, this is what we're going to do. And apparently they made it happen, and now it's a lot better place for people, and they have that openness and confidence that you could be approached and talked to about things like this, which is good because normally people don't go to police. And I'm on the CPCC, and I know a lot of complaints don't come in because of that fact, and people are getting to that point, they had enough and they just want this place to be a better, safer place and a better Brattleboro. And I really appreciate that, even during your surgery and all that, you still came through, which is great.
Well, thanks. Before I left on medical leave, I had been in touch with the police department for a few months, and we had decided that we really wanted to start having regular meetings. So in my absence, Lorelei Morissette was able to schedule that, and they started their first meeting, and we have the second one scheduled. So just more, and those meetings will really be about not about specific cases, but really about how we continue to partner better, how we continue to offer resources to our residents, how we make the police department more accessible to them. And I think to your point, Gary, that the police can be really scary for some people, and so how do we work with them to create a better partnership for our residents?
Right, I agree.
I had a question about how you said that they, the residents there reached out. Did they reach out individually, or did they have were they forming some kind of a group? Was it a group that already existed, or was just sort of happened, or?
I think they were I think they worked together as a group in the, day to day, that we don't like this isn't working, how are we gonna fix this, talking amongst each other and really being united around not wanting that on their property. I think the individuals, though, were the ones who ended up really reporting information and sending information to the police, which was very vital for them to really clearly understand the comings and goings of the property. And also Brattleboro housing staff, reporting just the ongoing events on a regular basis, enough that I believe that must have offered them some additional information.
There's so many children up there.
Right.
This is
I know.
really scary part was so many children and have no idea what could have happened.
And they deserve to live in a
Just be safe.
neighborhood where they feel safe, and they didn't for some time. Sure.
Good job.
Well, I'm really grateful to the police department and to our whole staff. They really have done a lot, and the residents. So, yeah, thank you. And I think now is an opportunity to come forward for their community and think about how they want to go forward as a group.
Mhm.
And I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah, it may have shown that some people have particular skills around, working in groups or some sort of advocacy or,
Yeah, certainly.
it's promising.
Other than that, I wanted to just recognize that many Brattleboro housing staff volunteered for groundworks while groundworks was taking a much needed break, and volunteered at the chalet and the Great River Terrace, and they did a wonderful job. Also, 3 of our staff members have graduated from the Southeastern Vermont
That's
Leadership
outstanding.
Program.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great program. David, have you attended that?
Oh, years ago.
Yeah, years ago. I did as well. It's a wonderful program, and so
Truly.
we try to offer it to every staff member at some point. And it's a very big commitment. It's almost a year long. They create projects and they present them, but they were all very proud. And I was able to go to the award ceremony, or the graduation, which was great, in Springfield, Vermont. So that's really, really just, I'm very proud of them. And then other than that, I just wanted to make sure, I know we've been talking a lot about our legal actions. I wanted to make sure that I gave you all a copy of all the legal actions in place that we have, the ones that have been resolved, which I think shows, which shows a lot of hard work with our residents, some of our community supports,
Right.
and also our staff. And so on that sheet, which, is very tiny print, but I was able to outline it in my notes, that we had 28 households since December with lease termination notices for non-payment, and 7 households with termination notices for cause. Of that, 16 of the households have rectified the past balances, and BHP is no longer in the process of terminating their leases. Of the remaining 12 households, 2 have a quarter to pay into court, and the 8 other households have a court date set in July to pay into court. We have 1 right of possession asking for a TAC order to respond to a termination notice. We have not filed with the court for 1 household, and there are 7 households with termination notices for cause. One case has been closed, and the remaining 6 are awaiting court dates. 2 of the 6 also have termination notices for non-payment. So all of our cases for cause have been based on a police record, something that happened with a police action, whether it was arrest or there was some sort of citation related to the police.
So Christine, quick question, having a WRIT asking for TAC, what is that? WRIT?
A right of possession and a TAC order is when you can't serve the person, the sheriff or the person who goes out to serve the person will try multiple times. They have to try different times a day, different days of the week. If they can't serve them after a certain amount of time, then they're allowed to put a TAC order, meaning they just put the notice on the door.
On the door, okay.
Good question.
I have been slowly, and I didn't include it in your packet because I'm still working on it, drafting a timeline for evictions, for cause, for non-payment, and for cause with arrest. Because they're all slightly different, but it really helps you to understand how long it takes.
Sure, absolutely.
So hopefully next month I'll have that finished.
Well, right after that, we have the write-offs list. And I believe we need to, does anybody have any questions? Because we're going to need to have a motion to approve these write-offs. Yeah.
So the first page is the yellow sheet, that's the report. And then we also have the write-offs, which are listed on your agenda.
Right.
So
So there's it.
there are 6 write-offs,
Yeah.
totaling $15,602.39.
So does anybody have any questions about these write-offs? I don't either.
So these write-offs are basically what rent that was due or rent that this wasn't collected because of the situation, basically. So how do you absorb
Sometimes
that?
it can be for damages.
Okay.
Mostly it's for rent that's due. So for instance, the first one was someone that moved into a nursing home. They had, they owed that much in rent. They hadn't paid it. We write it off, meaning that we take it off our books, but it still stays. We have it as debt owed, but we don't keep it on the general ledger. We close it out. It remains there for the duration. Sometimes when people owe a large balance, they will try to attempt to pay it off so that they can clear it so that it doesn't stay on their record, and that does happen sometimes, so people are able to do that. However, sometimes people are deceased and they have a balance. So for instance, there was a person who was deceased and they owed a balance of past due rent and legal costs, and we're not going to be able to get that back. So.
Yeah, I was just looking at number 3, it says 9,000.
Yeah, so that person was terminated for non-payment, so that was probably a year or plus of not paying for their rent, if not more. So then by the time we add that with the legal costs, that was the total amount.
Now, before what's the length or what's the procedure as far as, non-payment of rent? Is it a month, 2 months if you haven't paid it yet before it cures like this to 9,000? Was this during the COVID that they said they were waiting on checks, or I was just trying to see how it got to that amount?
I'm sorry, what?
I was wondering how it got to 9,000 because normally, most places when you rent out, they give you less than a year to pay.
Yeah, so this was because it took this long to evict the person for non-payment. So it probably began where they were back a couple of months rent, a few months rent, and that's when we started to. When somebody doesn't submit their full month rent, after 15 days, they get their first initial letter.
Right.
And then sort of the clock begins to tick.
Oh, it doesn't stop. Okay.
So how that would work would be for non-payment. So usually a household is between 30 and 60 days late. They're issued a letter from BHP about the amount owed. They need to pay that within 14 days. If the debt's not rectified, termination of the lease is issued with the attorney. They have 30 days to pay. This can be extended an additional 60 days if the resident is communicating with BHP and says that they're working on it with another agency. If the money is not received, then it's filed with the court.
Mm-hmm.
So that can take some time between filing with the court and getting a court date. It might take months and months. Then the household is allowed to pay into court, and then if they don't pay into court, if they do pay into court, then BHP will go to court for the final hearing, and the judge will determine that the balance is due and when it needs to be paid by. But if they don't, and they don't go to court, then we start the process of getting a right of possession, and that can take some time as well, because we have to serve the person, they have to be served to go to court, and if the person doesn't answer the door, that could take an additional month, so it can really take some time.
And that's that list that you're gonna get us, or.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna.
Okay, no, I was just.
Yeah, and so
wondering how
every
you
month
absorb
that they don't pay, it's just added on to that total, and then the
Right.
total, the total cost for, the reason we would like to work with people ahead of time is because we don't want it to go to court, because once they get court costs added on, then it's just more money that they owe,
Right.
and so those could be up to $2,000, $3,000, depending on how long the case took, or what other pieces were involved.
Because the only way I asked that, if they haven't paid and they got to this point, realistically in the real world, you're gonna get this back to 9,000, worst case scenario, if you don't, what happens to this then? And then you just, how they say, eat it or absorb it, or what
We
happens?
do, we keep it on our books, it's
Okay.
a debt owed to the housing authority, but we
Okay.
don't, it's on the books, but that's why we do the write-off, so that we write it off and we take it off the books, but then we hold it in reserve so that it's always going to be due by then.
Hmm. Yeah, because 1 and 2, I was just looking at those, that's your big chunk right there. Those two, yeah.
Do you have a motion to accept writing off $15,602.39?
I move we accept the,
Do you have a second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye?
Aye. Pass. Okay.
And then were there any questions about the property manager's report? I know, so last month there was a question in regards to lease ups. So there had been several vacancies. And so depending on the property, there's a different procedure for each property. So I'll start with Red Clover Commons because that tends to be the one right now where we're seeing a lot of vacancies. That's a tax credit property and they have their vouchers. The payment voucher is through Vermont State Housing. So it's a project-based voucher, and it's managed by Vermont State Housing, which means they manage the wait list. So as we have vacancies, they will take people off their wait list and then they will send us, the top 5, and then we screen them. The wait list at this point is several years old because a lot of the people who are on the wait list may have applied 5 years ago. Some of them don't want the housing anymore. Some of them have relocated. Some of them may be deceased. However, we can't purge that wait list. They have to purge that wait list. So if they decide that the wait list is very long and it's taking too much time, Vermont State Housing can purge the wait list, and David probably could explain better how to go about purging the wait list. But basically you send them notification that they're still on the wait list, do they still want to be on the wait list, and if they don't respond, they get another letter, and if they don't respond, then they're removed from the wait list. Is that correct, David?
I think in short, that's fine.
Yeah. so their wait list is pretty long at this point, but whether or not they choose to purge it is out of our control.
Okay.
So we are getting people, and we are screening people, and we are sending them notification. However, we're not getting as much back, and so then we'll do 5 or 10, then we'll go to another 5 or 10, and it just takes some time. So that's why that piece is a little bit slower than normal. The other housing sites, we manage the wait list, so we get to fill them quicker. David has recently purged his Section 8 list, which has been really helpful, and he can speak a little bit to that. But we, for our RAD properties, so Ledgewood, Moore Court, Hayes Court, and Salmon Island Apartments, we send out applications and we'll send out a chunk at a time. Some applications are denied when we get the information back. They might, for whatever reason, or the person doesn't want the housing, or we're just having a hard time reaching them. We need to try to reach them. We need to try to then send them the application again. We also need to send their contact person if there's a contact person on their application, we have to send it to them. So we really have to try to get in touch with them. So if we don't hear back, we document all of that and then we go forward. So it isn't as easy as just taking someone off the list. We also sometimes get people who will do everything, we'll be ready to lease them up and we'll be ready to sign, and they say, you know what, I'm not gonna move. And then we have to, backtrack and do that again. So that's where we sometimes run into trouble. But the property managers do a lot to sort of prepare for all of those scenarios so that we have those pieces. So as you'll see, like that month we had a big chunk. as of this month, we've started to lease up more, next month we have even more lease up. So sometimes it's just that the way it ebbs and flows. We might have like 7 or 8 vacancies one month, and then the next month have none.
And one of the niceties with the project-based voucher subsidy in the Red Clover 1 and 2 properties is that in the contract, there's an offering of what's called a vacancy payment. So the overseer of the subsidy can then pay the landlord up to 2 months full rent for a vacant unit, which helps take the sting out a little bit.
That's good.
And gives you a little more lead time as well in turning the unit over and getting an appropriate applicant housed.
Other times, other just oddities that could happen would be someone passes away and they don't have an next of kin, they don't have anybody, we can't just clean out the apartment and throw it, we have to go through, there's a legal process to that. Another thing would be if the apartment, some of the evictions for cause, we're finding that our apartments are in really disarray, so we really need to go in. It takes longer to turn them over, we might need to bring in contractors, and it's just a longer process.
Now, do you run into a lot of times people don't have all the information? Because lack of whatever they need for the applicant, because I know everyone runs into that, they don't have their stubs or whatever, and that can also grease, clog the wheel, not grease it.
It does.
And, how do you resolve that? And you give them a grace period?
We do, we can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if someone, does make application and there's some information that's missing, we would say we would like that within the next 5 business days. But if they say, listen, I have a doctor's appointment, I've got the vacation coming up, the dog ate my homework, whatever reason it is, we're pretty reasonable. And we'll go ahead and give them probably another 5 business days as well. Because, they understand the necessity of getting us that information. And we also understand how difficult having to move truly is.
And communication is key. When people communicate with us, then we're willing to give them a lot more room, because if they say, well, I called Social Security, I haven't gotten it yet, or, I have to get to my post office box, there's lots of things. So we are not, I feel like as an organization, we're really pretty understandable.
We won't
And
say anything about the post office.
Yes, things are slow
Mail
sometimes.
is very difficult
That's right.
at times.
All right. Any other?
I guess one last question, probably, I don't know, people out in the Zoom land might ask, people now that are being transitioned out of the hotels, how's that gonna factor in with new applicants, I guess, now that you already have previous?
Correct. The way that would work with our housing is like with anyone else, whether they're homeless or not homeless, that they're all eligible to make application for any of our properties. We can talk a little bit more when we get into talking about the special housing program that I administer called Shelter Plus Care for the homeless and the disabled, as well as the mainstream voucher, which is primarily meant for disabled adults who are getting supportive services. And that's the sticky wicket at this point in time. A lot of people that have left the hotels are out, and that's it. There's no point of return for them, but those that are still housed in the motels have the blessing from the Agency of Human Services to remain in the hotel until next spring. But if you're newly homeless today and make application with AHS for a motel voucher, there are specific conditions that you would have to meet in order to get that. So only those that were there at the 1st of June, I think, will be grandfathered for the end of next spring.
And they have certain criteria they have to adhere to also.
Correct.
With that, yeah.
Thank you, that's good information.
I did, I'm gonna wait till you bring up, there's one question I'm
And
gonna
and
ask.
I think maybe when David talks, he can talk a little bit about coordinated entry as well. There's a coordinated entry program, so, our hope is that everyone who's in coordinated entry has put in an application as soon as they enter coordinated entry for our housing sites and programs.
Has everybody reviewed the Wellness and Services monthly report? Central News. A lot of stuff going on here. The SASH. Very well written report. If anybody have any questions, I think I can bring it up.
Very explanatory.
Okay.
I read the information from Shauna about the memorandum of understanding that wasn't signed. Can you say something about what's the expected repercussions of that?
Yeah, so for months now, Cathedral Square Corporation, who oversees the grant for the SASH program, had been collaborating with the councils on aging across the state, and there had been a lot of concern around duplication between the SASH program and the Senior Solutions program. And there was some language in the memorandum of understanding that they couldn't agree on. And so they've decided not to sign the MOU and be core team partners anymore, the way they have been for the past decade. However, what we've seen locally and in the drill, all the panels that we serve as the drill, that the agency, case managers and the agencies have just signed on to be part of the meeting still, they signed an agreement instead saying that they'll participate at the meetings, and we write them into the use and disclosure form. And so it hasn't really impacted the people boots on the ground. I think it's more of a leadership issue between the two organizations, and a lot of it has to do with, I believe, funding and also, just vision or perception of duplication. And so hopefully those talks will continue. We've met with our local Senior Solutions, and I really listened to their concerns, and we talked about potentially partnering together to do some education in the community around how we don't duplicate it and like what the two different groups do, because we are serving different needs.
Right.
And so they seemed very receptive to doing that. However, if the whole state doesn't agree, then no one agrees. So they're a united front. And so we're just doing the best we can going forward to meet the resident needs. And from what I've heard from the implementation manager and from other SASH coordinators and housing hosts around our area, that it has not impacted service at all.
Great. That's good news.
I think it really speaks to how the SASH team has a good relationship with Senior Solutions, that Senior Solutions is willing to sign on in this other way in order to continue to provide the services.
I agree.
There's probably a good amount of people in the housing partnership that receive choices for care, long-term care, and need a Senior Solutions or Vermont, New Hampshire case manager. And so if there's not that coordination, then that puts them in a vulnerable position.
Right, it really is only going to hurt the residents. And we've seen over the years that for whatever reason, residents that live in low-income housing are less likely to receive services than people in the community. It's harder to identify those needs. And so the SASH program being embedded specifically in these housing sites really does make a difference in at least addressing the initial need, connecting them to those services. I do know that not every council on aging around the state are working as well as ours is with us. So I'm really proud of the work that the SASH team did, but also I'm really grateful to that organization for their continued, dedication to partnership. And I think it's a real testament, as you said, to the team itself and the people who do the hard work, which is really the direct service work.
Well, as usual, the SASH literature that goes out to people is fabulous. Anybody have any questions about that? No, we could go on to Shelter Plus Care and Section 8. Your report. Yes?
Well, I understand, I think it was at last month's meeting, there were some questions regarding our specialized housing program for those who are homeless and disabled. And that's known as the Shelter Plus Care program.
Right.
It's part of the umbrella of a subset of HUD called Community Planning and Development. So as opposed to the Housing Choice Voucher that's overseen by the HUD umbrella, Shelter Plus Care is a subset of that, and it's being overseen by Community Planning and Development. that oversees shelter plus care, and I would say a myriad of other specialized housing programs in the community. HOPWA is one, or Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS. This is a federally funded program that is also overseen by Community Planning and Development, so just an example of those specialized programs. For the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships, we've had the reins on shelter plus care now for about 25 years. It serves, again, a very specific population of those who are homeless. The forte is those who are chronically homeless as opposed to those who are literally homeless. But if we have fulfilled the need for the chronically homeless in our community and still have subsidies available, then we'll gladly welcome anyone who was literally homeless as well. So the process for a subsidy for shelter plus care is driven by this machine that Christine calls coordinated entry. And coordinated entry is a filtering system developed by HUD in about the last 5 years or so that's currently being managed by Groundworks Collaborative. Every community in the state of Vermont, every community in the country that has homeless grants has this entity called coordinated entry. And the individual that is at risk of being homeless or actually being homeless must register through this system of coordinated entry in order for me to get to know them. So if someone were to come to me today and say, David, listen, I'm homeless, I'm on Social Security disability, what am I going to do? I said, have you registered for coordinated entry? What's that? I said, you need to go to Groundworks, South Main Street, and register so you can get on the list, and then they will rank you as far as your level of need. All right, because there are, again, a myriad of different housing programs for homeless or disabled, or homeless and disabled. So coordinated entry is going to cover all those other subsets of housing programs. You're with me? So then what would happen, and I met with AHS, the Agency of Human Services Field Director, Sue Graff, a couple of weeks ago, as well as our 3 sponsors. The care part of Shelter Plus Care, they provide case management that's required on a monthly basis. And that is Groundworks provides case managers for the homeless disabled population, Shelter Plus Care, as does Pathways to Housing Vermont, as does Healthcare and Rehabilitative Services, HCRS. We circled the wagons a couple of weeks ago simply because we were aware, and clearly aware, of the need of rental subsidies for the homeless and disabled in our community, especially with the hotel-motel voucher coming to an end, or it has actually ended for a lot of folks. So those folks will need to be on the coordinated entry list in order to even get to know who I am and to get to know who Shelter Plus Care is as far as assisting them. During that meeting, we were certainly able to refine the application process for the service providers in Groundworks, because each of those entities of Groundworks, HCRS, or Pathways to Housing, they all have their individualized strengths. So would it not make more sense if somebody had a severe mental illness situation that HCRS would be the preferred sponsor because that's their specialty. They deal with mental health issues as opposed to other challenges of life that Groundworks might be able to take care of, or addiction issues that Pathways to Housing is very strengthy in. So we were able to refine that choreography for making application. And then once an application is made and I inform the overseer of that grand list called coordinated entry, I would then inform them of the availability of X number of subsidies being available, which I have been doing for the last 18 years regularly, whether it's coordinated entry or not. The biggest challenge is that the 3 service providers that we have memorandum of understanding with do not have the staffing capacity to take on new people at this point in time. So we've got a roadblock. So with the support of the Agency of Human Services, they, again in our region, are reaching out to other service providers that we're not under contract with to see if they would like to come on board and provide case management services to the homeless and disabled. I would be ready, willing, and able to accept, a large group of providers in the community if they have the capacity as well to be able to do that. And I think a few of them know our need. The requests have been made. They have the template of the MOU to look at the nuts and bolts and the expectations of their participation and signing on. So it's completely transparent. There's nothing, we're dealing from the bottom of the deck, no surprises. And we'll just have to wait and see how things pan out at this point. So currently, I think we have 17 participants. We should have 23. That is our biggest challenge in the 18 years I've been doing this. We have had a census of approximately 32 at some point in time years ago. That was wonderful. I've got enough funding probably right now to support 25, maybe 30 even. But I just want to, even if we can get one, or two in the next month, and even if they then do get a subsidy, where are they going to use it? The availability of low-income housing in our community is virtually non-existent.
Right.
So unless they're on a wait list with a low-income housing provider such as Wyndham Windsor, Westgate, Adair Heights, the private rental market is the worst that I've seen ever, in my life as a housing administrator. So that's another mountain to climb. So that's also going to be a challenge, for the homeless and disabled, but they do have the hand up by having supportive services. And Brattleboro also has a plethora of remarkable landlords that are willing to work with us and the homeless population, and they should just be recognized because they're unbelievable, and they'll reach out and do anything they possibly can to assist in this process. So we're very blessed.
That was a very clear report. I really appreciate that. Thank you so
Any
much.
other questions about Shelter Plus Care? It's an annually funded grant. It used to be every 5 years, but I think maybe 15 years ago it went to the annual renewal, which we've always been renewed with a little bit more money, which is great. And I would much rather us spend the money and give that to private landlords and house the homeless, disabled, than the feds take it back and then risk us in the future saying, listen, Brattleboro, you haven't met your quota for the last 2 years. Why should we send you X amount of dollars when Chicago needs more? And they've got the supportive services. So it's all, all boots on the ground, and we're marching. So we hope that we can lease up a few families in the next couple of months.
So it's case managers that are missing, or other services?
Yeah, I think it's more so the capacity for the case managers that they have. I think there's not enough funding for these agencies to add more case managers to take on the need that is actually in the community. They have X amount of dollars for their case management pool, and I'm sure they've expended that plus for what they already have, but our need in the community is so severe that they could probably add another 2, 3, 4 case managers to be able to take on new cases, but they don't have the funding for their salaries and benefits. And everybody says, why doesn't the state do that? Well, the state probably is doing everything they possibly can, and they have, with COVID dollars as well, and there's money available for building new housing that will probably not happen for another 5 years. So where does that leave us within those 5 years? That it's not just the responsibility of the state of Vermont to fund the supportive service agencies, but the private entities as well.
You pretty much summed it up, because I guess it answers the 2 questions. You pretty much answered that.
My telepathy classes are paying off.
It was the sum of all things, like the movie. So basically, because with the monies that they were supposed to get back when they left, the security deposits, with that, okay, you get all that money back plus that. The question is, okay, where we get this, where we're gonna put them?
Right, I think it was $3,000, Gary, it's $3,300 or something like that.
$3,300,
Right, so you get the
that.
33.
Okay.
That'll get you first month, last month, and a secure deposit,
Right.
probably for a one-bedroom. But if you can't find that and you're out of a hotel, so then I'm gonna have to privately, out of pocket, rent a hotel room myself, pay market costs of $50 a night, so that's $1,500 a month. So for 2 months, I'm good. After that, I'm almost in.
So, and it just, this circles and keeps going around until that affordable housing is built.
Precisely, precisely.
So, I guess, and also like you say, getting those quality people in there is good to help out, but, okay, you get them in there, you do your case management, okay, they've been assessed and everything, and now they're ready, so where do you put them? Realize the rub, as the barber would say. So, the question is, what's the next step?
Well, the nice thing for the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships is seeing that we are such a small grain of rice, there is not the clock ticking on our blessing for someone that is offered a subsidy in shelter plus care.
Right.
We would love to see them housed within 30 days, 60 days. I have had people that are still in the program that for unknown reasons were evicted from their previous residences, and they have now been looking for over a year just in Brattleboro to find a place. And I'm not going to say, well, geez, your subsidy's gone. It's not their fault, there's nothing available out there. So I just, again, it's communication. I want to know where they're looking, who they talk to, do they have any questions? If I have any hot tips, I'll gladly share them with you. Call me once a month, see if I have any, anything to share with you as well. So,
Because I thought it was mentioned, I think in one of the teams, they were talking about increasing subsidy. Sure, you could increase the amount, but then it goes back to where do you put them?
It doesn't sound like you feel like we're at risk of losing that grant.
yeah, I'm guardedly optimistic, but I don't know how much longer we can go. We'll wait and see what happens with my grant renewal next year, because it will be the first time ever that we have not met our obligation of a minimum of 23. But again, we've had the cause celeb of COVID perhaps as an ace to play. That is a reality, and that certainly can have some effect on the supportive services component and capacity for case managers. But how COVID's pretty well fading away at this point. Not gone, but fading away, and we'll just have to wait and see.
We were renewed for the next year. Correct?
I'm sorry?
We were renewed for next year.
Yes, we are renewed for the next 12 years, 12 months that starts in October.
Yeah.
What is for the units for housing, what is the length for the waiting list now? 1.5 to 2 years?
It depends on which program, but for the RAD program it is. But I would say that's probably, if you're looking for a 0-bedroom, if you're willing to take a studio and you're a senior or an adult with disability, it's probably a little bit less than that because you have a little flexibility. If you are looking for a 5-bedroom, we only have a certain number of 5-bedrooms, so that might take a lot longer. Those people might never not move out of those housing sites. So it does, there's a lot of pieces to it. I would say for a single adult, it would probably be around 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years.
That's about right. And I was thinking too with families, because I heard you mention people with disabilities or other, but people with families, that's another thing with kids. I don't know what spectrum or what category they might fit into that, whether they have priority first, or you're also dealing with people with domestic violence. You have people that are veterans. So you have a whole spectrum that you have to really sit, and it's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard.
Do you give a preference to every specific group, or does that just turn the preference into the same old for everyone is simply in need as great as the person next to them? That's the tough part. And you're talking waiting lists. I'm soon to issue some vouchers from the Section 8 wait list that's been closed for a couple of years. We did this action called a purge, where we reconnected people if they're still connected. We think we removed probably 50 to 60 people that are on the list of 400-ish or so I'm hoping to get out at least 10 to 12 vouchers of people that made application in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
9 years. And people call me and say, David, I want to second your application today. I said, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you. Why not? I said, well, do you want to call me in 10 years and see where you are on the list? It's not fair to you either, you know. So we'll just keep working the system as we need to and get subsidies out there, but hoping that we can have some more affordable housing properties in the community really soon.
Yeah.
A couple of years at the
David and I have been brainstorming around potentially, maybe, working with the board to have a temporary preference for people who are housed, but but they're paying more than, 30% for their rent, more than 50% of their rent. How do we prioritize that group so that we can issue vouchers and really meet those needs in the community? But, but unfortunately that would trump the people who are already on the list. So, those are big decisions. So we're putting together, we've been talking about it, and Vermont State Housing did offer a preference for people who were on the VREP program. And so we're looking at, basically who is left and how would we go about doing that. And maybe it's just a short-term preference just to get people onto the program that we know have that need and are not looking for housing. So that's something that we've been sort of noodling around how to go about doing that.
Right. We can afford
within
it.
the constraints of HUD.
That's a good topic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other questions for David?
No, I just want to say thank you, David. I mean,
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes.
looking at the way the economy is, people, even now when things are up, people just a paycheck away from being on that list.
Yes. Right.
So,
Nice to see you all face to face after a couple of years.
absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
And David did a wonderful lunch and learn, which we recorded, and I know I've sent out that link, but I'm happy to send it out again. It's a great refresher for people to just watch. It's not like the most exciting thing you'll ever see, but I will send out the link again to you all. And, we had 2 lunch and learns. One was David and one was property management, and I can send them both to you. You're happy to watch it. And then we want to try to schedule another one, potentially in person, with our wellness and services group next, and then the finance team.
Super.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Good.
Bye.
Any questions about the May check listing? No. We can pass on that. Any questions on the April comparable? April 23rd. The tax credit, all these financial, very well written, detailed statements, financial statements. Any questions about those? Okay. We've got our check signing assignments through October.
Yes, I'll wait October, because I'm in October, so
Pardon?
I'm in October, I think, we're all the way to October, which is good.
Yeah.
See you in September.
If I'm skipping over anything too fast, please let me know. Okay. Proposed retirement gift.
Oh, I did want to ask, I think, did we do the review tax? We just went over that already, right? Okay, so that's already,
Yeah.
all right, so you just do that, okay.
So item C in financial review, proposed retirement gift, $1,500, proposed bonuses for 2 employees who worked extra during employee medical leave, $500 each. I think that is just wonderful. Yes, does anybody have any discussion or questions?
No?
Okay. May I have a motion that we accept that?
I have a motion that we accept that.
I
Do we have a
second it.
second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye. All right, pass.
That would be that.
well deserved.
That's right. So that takes care of I, 1 and 2. Okay, special projects, SASH For All Pilot. There's development.
So the redevelopment, that's happening.
So for Melrose, we're in the process, and I didn't submit the whole RFQ
Okay.
because it's really long, but I put the most important pieces that I thought you would be interested in. Basically,
Okay.
the statement of intent, so what we're trying to accomplish, what we're looking for in an architect. We're really looking for someone that can work with us from the beginning to the end, that can attend meetings, can attend meetings with the town, can help with presentations, and to really also look at the buildings themselves to really give us a clear vision of what it would take to reuse some of these buildings, and if that's possible.
Right.
And then the criteria for evaluating this, so just to give you an understanding is, so because we're using funds that are public housing funds, Melrose is the only property we have left that have public housing, meaning they get a, even though we don't have anyone housed there, they're the only ones still in public housing. The rest the rest of the portfolio moved to RAD or their tax credit. So because they're in public housing, they get funds called capital fund money. So what that means is there's specific dollars put in for capital improvements. But to use that money, you have to be very clear. You have to tell HUD exactly what you're going to use it for. And you need to, if you have a big contract such as this, which we're putting out to bid, we need to do a formal bid application. And so that's why we needed to have this very specific type of procurement for this program. And so we have to follow the HUD regulations for public housing because they're the ones it's the only property we have left in that. So in that process, we need to put this out to bid. It has to be a public bid. We'll have to have a committee that reviews the bid. And so I would, part of this process and looking at this was I was hopeful that next month, if you wanted to review this, we would also have a board member who, is the most qualified potentially or the most willing to really understand this information to come in and work with us on reviewing the bids and then choosing the best bid. And so I wanted to give you the criteria. If you look at if you turn it over, really we'll be talking about, all on the first page and the second page, we'll talk about what we're really looking for and the criteria, and then how we're going to determine which is the best, proposal. So you don't have to do anything today, but I wanted you to have this information to review, and that way when we go forward next month, and hopefully I think we'll have it totally ready for you. Then you'll be able to look at it, you'll be able to say whether or not you want to go forward, you think that this is the right way to proceed, and if there's one board member who would like to be on that committee and choosing it, then I would ask that the board decide at that meeting.
Okay.
And I think going forward, the board should really be thinking about if we were to have a subcommittee from the board, very specifically to have one person from the board to be part of the planning and from the beginning to end of this project. I think it would be really helpful. The whole board will be involved. It's not that you're not going to be involved, but to have one person who's really able to participate in some of those meetings that are off schedule, that are not part of this meeting, to be at community meetings when we engage other residents in the community, to be part of the planning meetings. That would be really wonderful and helpful. And then also to be able to report back out to the board.
Okay.
So it'll be like an interaction with the people, like you do like a planning committee RFP, explain to them basically, like Brandy and then do when we have that. Okay. So Wyndham Regional Commission, would they also be a part of that?
They might be a part of this, yeah. They'll probably be a part of once we get an architect on board and we start looking at plans, then we'll start really starting to look at where we're gonna get the money from. Yeah.
Right, I agree.
So even though you didn't need to do such a formal bid for Red Clover, you recently did a couple of big construction projects. Are there is that team going to be, like, who on Brattleboro Housing Partnerships worked on that?
So Chris Hart was the development manager for Red Clover Commons 2, and she worked to develop Red Clover Commons 1. She's helping to put together the bid, and she'll be a part of the process of choosing the architect. She will also be part of the process of choosing the developer. So we will need to hire next. Once we get this piece done, we'll need to hire a developer to work with us, and she will be part of that process of hiring. And we have a couple of people in mind that we've worked with in the past that we'd like to potentially work with again. So we'll be really engaging them in this process.
Yeah. Excellent,
Yeah, it's exciting.
very exciting.
Before we move on from SASH For All, I just wanted to say I'm excited in reading Jake's piece in here about the work that's happening there. I
Yes.
just feel like the work with the children and the families, preventive, everything, it's just they're the future, and I'm really excited about the work that's happening there.
I am too. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was so special.
And the good news is that, so the original grant was funded through a congressional earmark, which was approved by Bernie Sanders. So that was, so we have funding through the beginning of the fall. And it, after a lot of hard work by a lot of people, we have now been, the second year is in the budget for the state. So, so funded through the second year, and then we've applied the third year for an earmark again to then expand the program. And we're really hopeful that by that time we'll have a lot of data. We have a whole evaluation team now. We received a grant to pay for an evaluation team, so we have 2 people, Emily Kornhauser and also Maggie Foley, who are working specifically with the group, and we'll have a SASH For All retreat with some of the organizational leaders, but also the boots on the ground people, to really glean as much information as we can about the program. So I'm hopeful that we're going to have a lot of good data to share.
Right.
Good.
Oh, we will.
Yeah.
I believe
Even
it.
if it's not necessarily, because it's new, but we'll have a lot of, we'll have data, both qualitative and quantitative data to share, which will, I think, just propel the program. So it's been great, yeah. And you're absolutely right, Jake's doing a great job, and he has just such a great way about him. He's very personable, but just super smart, and he has great boundaries, but enthusiastic, and his energy can be really contagious. So it's been really good.
But to have that energy level, it
Yeah.
kind of spills over and gets everybody else motivated, which is
Absolutely.
great.
It's by far my proudest, but the proudest thing we have done in the last few years is getting this program off the ground. It's something that I've wanted to do since I started here 11 years ago, so it's really cool. I can't say enough of great things about it.
So I guess, I don't know, it's been a while since we visited the SASH people. We ever, I guess, in July, we have never met them at their facility when they're really doing their thing. Maybe something that we might project to do somewhere, I guess, after July 4th, but that's the big holiday. I think anybody wants to.
Yeah, I think, you will definitely be invited to the HUD event. You'll also be invited to the Moore Court event once we have it, and we'll have supportive services there. And I would really like to have that lunch and learn set up once people, July's a hard month because everyone's on vacation. It's like, so luckily I'm back because a lot of people need to, they want to take their vacation. So I think, Lorelai's on vacation right now. She comes back right after the 4th. I think at that point, coming up with some dates that work for you. I'll send out some dates that work for the board, because I think it's going to be really essential that you're all there if possible.
Because my daughter just graduated, she just started down in Dartmouth, UMass. So
Exciting.
acquisitioning her down there, doing orientation down there, I was away for it. I definitely know that July 4th, she wants me to go down again to just get, she's away like 4 hours, so being by herself there, having that support, and she's made 4th in her class as national honor.
Congratulations.
So
That's
she's
great.
really, just want to keep that energy and fire going. So maybe, I guess the beginning of August might be.
Yeah, I'll send out some dates, and we'll try to do a calendar and get everybody there, because I think it's important for you all to be together
Yeah.
to meet with them. I think that'll be great.
And you'll
Yeah.
love it. It meets the SASH with it's phenomenal.
Yeah, good.
You know, we're doing, but yeah.
Well, the last thing on our agenda is report Brattleboro housing opportunities, financial statement and update.
Other than receiving some additional funds in April, I don't have that much to report. I know that Alicia and Lorelei have met, and I know that, and maybe they talked about this at the last meeting, but the last I heard was they came up with sort of a logo to use and those sorts of things. They were having those printed, and I said that the next thing they're really doing is just trying to, again, just recruiting people who have good fundraising experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, good. Anybody else have any questions or concerns or?
Did we have, this is basically the full commission, we didn't have another opening out there taking, we didn't have another opening, no vacancy for commission? This was
No.
No.
Alicia was, her vacancy, so her term was ended this month, but she renewed.
Oh, okay, I just didn't look, but I was looking
She
at the town
reapplied,
Yeah, she just
website.
couldn't come today.
Yeah, no, she
Oh.
reapplied for her
Okay.
position, which started again as of this month.
Because the way select board did it that night, when they did the vote, they ran into 11 at night. They said, let's just vote for all this. I'm like, what did you vote for? Other than the other two committees, they couldn't because they're gonna have
Nobody else applied for the position.
Really? Okay.
She was the only person that applied.
That's good.
But because she was applying, because she's the vice chair, we didn't like do a huge amount
we
of
just kind
outreach
of
for it because, you know, we really like the idea of keeping people more than one term because you learn so much.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And it's so hard to come on and
Right.
learn that all over again. So I think it was just like a very quick, you know.
So that being said out there too, but anyone wanted to, like, how many terms or tours are you allowed within, because it's 5 years, and you're allowed how often to apply? I guess?
Twice?
Yeah, you're allowed twice, a total
Okay.
of 10 years.
Okay.
And then, but if you come in midterm, then there's some stipulation around that as
Okay.
well. And so there's some additional pieces. And then you can go off the board. You can still be on a committee or you could be on BHOI, but then you can wait a certain number of years and then come back on the board. So we've had people do that. Janet Kramer had done that earlier.
Yeah.
Good to know. People out there.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned, and thank you, BCTV.
Thank you, BC.